Chair, I have a quick comment.
Yeah,
I just got a call from Satpal,
yeah.
and he's just making sure that everybody knows that he needs to be promoted to a panelist when it's his turn to speak.
Okay. And
Sounds good.
you got, okay. Thanks, Mike and Ann, for helping with that. Is he on right now as an attendee?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
he
Okay,
is.
great. Well, it's 8 o'clock, so I would like to call the September 13th, 2022 Whatcom County PUD regular commission meeting to order. And the first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. The next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. So the approval of minutes from the regular meeting of August 23rd and the approval of claims for September 13th.
Did you want to deal with number 2 first on the agenda?
Oh,
Is that
sorry.
number 3 you're asking?
Oh, okay. First item, sorry. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as it reads.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, next to the consent agenda, the approval of minutes from August 23rd and the approval of claims from September 13th.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent. You go for it all too. I'll second it.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the claims and the minutes.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries. The next item is public comment. Anne, are you seeing anyone?
I don't see anybody
Yeah,
on.
we have a couple of members of. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just saying, I don't see anybody raising their hands in the attendees.
We have
Okay,
Mrs. Perry.
Mrs. Perry is here.
Just a comment, it feels quite different here at the PUD with the Zoom meetings. For older people, it's a little hard to adjust sometimes, but we're learning again.
Thank you. Did the commissioners hear the comment?
Yeah, we did.
Okay,
And
thank you,
you
Mrs.
know,
Perry.
thank you for the comment, and we'll try to keep making the meetings as accessible as possible. Any other comments in the room?
I just advised the commission, I did reach the Water Right Council. They will not be here in person. They will join by executive session by Zoom.
Great, thank you. Okay, seeing no hands raised, I am going to close public comment. And there will be another public comments period at the end of our meeting, just so everyone knows. So moving on to old business, the only item under old business is the broadband program update. Chris, is that going to be you or Andrew or both of you?
It'll be both of us, but primarily Andrew. So at this point, I'd like to call Andrew up to the microphone and turn it over to him.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, commissioners. I'll just start off with the curb feasibility study. We're still on track to have that completed by November. Next month, we'll have our consultants who have been guiding us through the study meet with the steering committee, and we will review any final details or things that we need to do to complete to stay on track for the November deadline. So that's moving forward. And then later, depending on schedules in November, December, like I said, depending on availability and schedules, we'll schedule a time for the consultants to come back to the full commission for a formal presentation. So that's the update on the curb feasibility study. Now, moving on to the state broadband office,
Chair,
you
should we
might
do-
know that
Should we do questions on the feasibility study first or break it up? Do it after the whole presentation?
I would suggest that we do it when it's live. So I would want to entertain the questions on a topic by topic basis.
Is that
Sounds-
okay? Okay, so I have a question on the feasibility study. So as far as understanding the level of service model that we're looking at, what level of service models are we looking at? Will it be how will that subject of the depth of service that the PUD could provide be presented in the feasibility study?
You want me to go ahead?
go ahead.
So we're looking at a full service model where it's the ISP and a lit fiber model to the end use customer. And we're doing that kind of in parts. So you'll be able to see if it would be feasible to do the lit fiber and not the ISP, or the ISP and not the lit fiber, or the entire wall-to-wall service model.
So you're looking at those three options. How about further breakdown in the services provided on lit fiber?
Well, I'm just not sure exactly what you're getting at. If we're looking at the ISP and us being the ISP, then it would be a full service delivery model from us as the ISP. If
Okay,
we're
so
not the ISP, then it would be a competitive ISP offering.
I'm referring to one of the things that no one has looked at and other PUDs have looked at is the data only service. Is that
We
something you
didn't
look?
get to that level of granularity.
I'd like you to consider that. I don't know, that may be a follow-on study. It may be something that is a higher level of granularity than we're equipped for, but it's certainly something that I've discussed before and that I'm interested in, is a data only. Because see, the thing is that one of the big things that is concerning for PUDs is, providing the complexity of retail service that a Comcast provides. And certainly an important and valid point in essentially operating a full-blown storefront. This is what makes retail difficult, is like American consumer.
Commissioner, trust me, that this is, when I was in Henderson, we offered voice and data only, no content. So I'm very familiar with the model. We're going to find out if we can make that without doing a whole nother study. And it may very well be that no one that has that information in the model and they just haven't opened it to us. If they have it divisible in the model that way, we'll get it. If they don't, we probably won't. And we'll end up with, this is an additional thing we need to study beyond the scope of the current feasibility model.
So are you registering that it's something that we will look at as part of this process, whether it's the output of the consultant? Okay, I'm saying I want that to be looked at.
That may be outside of the scope of what we've contracted for under the CURB feasibility grant. So
perhaps
if in fact it.
But it needs to be
Right.
done. It needs to be done.
Right. So at this point, I would ask, are there any other questions on the CURB feasibility study?
No, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have a question?
I was looking at the slide I have here, identifying the service areas that, and remember you gave me a copy, or I took a picture of the copy. I was wondering if we could put that sometime in the boardroom, showing the areas that aren't serviced compared to what's serviced, because I don't think a lot of people really know what we're thinking of doing. If you remember this, the light blue areas are the areas that are lacking or do not have service compared to these dark areas. But I don't think a lot of people really understand where we are tending to go. So what do you think? Is that something possible to have something in here? Or
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
So that
in
we-
fact, we could just use the same presentation board we put together for the open house that we did. Because that was one of the maps that Andrew put together and we had on a big board and we could just bring it in here. I know you've still got it in your office, right?
Yes,
I
it
do,
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it really cleared it up for me to understand, where we're heading and restricted even by what areas are being serviced compared to not. So for me, I thought that would, good for others too,
Mhm.
if I could do that.
In fact, I see some open space on the wall, right to your right.
Right.
That would work.
That's it. Thank you, Christine.
Great. I did have one further question about the curb feasibility study work. So it sounds like we'll be getting a presentation. Is it going to be the next commission meeting or the first commission meeting in October?
So our current plan is to have the consultants come in and it looks like it's going to be the second or third Thursday of October to the Broadband Steering Committee, the Joint Port Commission PUD meeting. And we're going to invite both you and Commissioner Shepherd there from the port. So it'll be the broader steering committee. And then the output of that meeting would drive a presentation by the consultants to this commission and the port commission separately. But sometime early in November, we think.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to suggest that I think that the broadband open house that we did in Ferndale, which we promoted, heavily on social media and I think even in the press, was a really successful event. And I would like to suggest that we consider doing something like that again when we have some results from this study, just to keep the community updated. A lot of people don't come to our 8 a.m. Tuesday PUD commission meetings. And I just think that continuing to reach out to the community is valued.
And I think as part of our grant applications, one of the key aspects of it is what you do for public engagement. And we do a lot, but we could do more. I mean, you can never do, it seems, enough. And so it would be helpful probably to have another open house this year. Thank you.
Andrew, please continue. Thanks for entertaining all of our questions.
Well, yeah, these are good questions. It's good to talk through these. And just on that note, we know that the port's East Nooksack project is moving along well, and they anticipate the first customer connected by the end of December. So wanted to give a shout out to the port for a job well done and that project moving forward, and let you all know about that.
Yeah, and just to give a little granularity on that, Andrew, all of the pre-work has been done on one phase of it. The fiber has actually been hung on a number of the runs, so it's moving along nicely.
And then to piggyback off of the kind of mapping question that you had talked about, Commissioner Murphy, there's the FCC, as we've talked about in previous commission meetings, the FCC is putting together brand new broadband maps. And and what we know about the current broadband maps, they're at the census block granularity. And what the FCC maps are trying to do now is turn that into actual serviceable locations. So down to the address level, what address points are served and unserved. So the map that we currently have of current census blocks, and we all know the issues with that model, will turn into an address point map of where we can serve and where we can't, based on those FCC maps. And the rollout timeline for that, just heard yesterday, the first phase will be released in November, no specific date, just in November. And then that'll be the preliminary release so that everybody can see all of the serviceable locations. And then they'll have a second release in December, and then a third release in March. And what they're telling us is that in March is when NTIA, who's administering the big phase of dollars for grants out to the states, NTIA is waiting until the March release before they move forward with the notice of funding opportunity. So we have a little bit of time there. And between all of that, the reason why they're setting all these different release dates is so that they can get more accurate data after each release. And there's a process to go through that with the ISPs and other entities. So we're tracking that right now. So just wanted to keep you give you a heads up that that's coming down, and staff is monitoring and tracking that on a regular basis. Did I forget anything on that point?
Maybe if I could just highlight a little bit more on that.
Sure.
In many other areas, there are entire communities that aren't in the fabric. We don't seem to have that problem here. And what we're going to be looking at in the data on the fabric is, because we've been with this local loops group and the tag group extensively, we know of a whole bunch of communities that, small neighborhoods, for instance, that are either underserved or unserved inside served census tracts. So we want to make sure that when we look at the fabric, that those things are daylighted. So that's going to be our error check. We're literally going to be at the address by address level and seeing how that works. There are other places in America where entire communities have been left off. And so, we're going to be looking at it because we've got Andrew and he's already looked at this in incredible detail, and we can afford to do that. Other communities are just going to make sure that whole cities are included.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yep. Let's see, the state broadband office has issued a call for comments, and they're asking for stakeholder feedback on, let me back up. Before they issued their notice of funding for the last pot of ARPA dollars that they have available, they've sent out a stakeholder email asking for a call for comments on things like open access requirement, whether it should be a requirement or not, matching requirement, last round 20% match. So if you have a $20+ million, you have to come up with the 20% match, which can be challenging for some communities. The challenge process itself. So when you submit an application to the state broadband office, internet service providers can challenge that. So what do we do about that? Defining last mile service, and then they put in their other various considerations. So our friends at the port and their partners, Petricor, who also happens to be doing our feasibility study, will be drafting a response to all of these questions, and they'll provide them to the port and to us prior to the October 4 deadline. And we can create a response ourselves as our own entity and send that into the broadband office as well. Or we could do a collaborative response also, but we'll have a response nonetheless from Petricor and the port on this. So we'll talk more and get something out to the broadband office with our thoughts. And Petricor, as you know, encourages entities to submit their own response in support of open access fiber networks. And thank you, Commissioner, for sending that to us, because one of the issues that we found was that not all entities who are eligible to apply for the state broadband office dollars didn't actually receive that stakeholder email call for comments. So thanks for forwarding that to us. The last piece that I'll end with is Point Roberts. We checked in with our friends over at Would-Be Telecom, who applied for round 3. They've been awarded 2 previously federal pockets of dollars for broadband, and they went after what's called Reconnect 3 for $3.4 million. And unfortunately, we were told that they were not successful. So staff developed a kind of a broadband assessment for Point Roberts to kind of nail down what a potential partnership might look like once the dollars open up next. So we can look at a potential project in Point Roberts. And that, coupled with the feasibility study, I think we'll have a really good sense of the project areas that we can either do or not do. So I'll end there and I'll kick it back over to Chris. Thanks for listening.
I've got some questions.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, let's start with the last thing you discussed first. Do you think that the Point Roberts community would be open to an alternative proposal that's much heavier on fiber and much lighter on wireless?
I can only tell you my impression from what we've heard. Sat Paul is with us now, actually, as a panelist, so if he wants to weigh in, he can. But he's had an open house up there, and what we've seen is kind of a mixed response from the community, and probably not a response that's statistically valid. So it's kind of who showed up and cared, and that's what we heard. So there's that. So there's that kind of issue. The other thing is, our proposal is simply to cover that with fiber. So it's not just a fiber heavy proposal, it's a fiber only proposal. And, so it's maxed out in that direction. And that's the grant funding that we're going to attempt to secure with the port.
Okay, so when we reapply, it will be a fiber heavy proposal, but I thought that there was a proposal that the telecom company and the county were working on that was wireless heavy. Am I wrong in saying that?
I can only tell you that we provided a little bit of technical assistance to the county so that they could put together an RFP for a wireless solution up in Point Roberts. It's quite possible that you end up with both at the end of time because people use those for different things.
Sat Paul just unmuted and turned his camera on. Sat Paul, welcome. Would you like to jump in here?
Well, sure. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I don't want to weigh in too much into this because it's still in flux. Yes, we did had an open house, and I'm waiting for the Point Roberts Community Advisory Committee to send an official request after they have done an online survey. It was not based on only people who attended, because I asked them that it should be a little bit more robust. And the other part is that which I don't know what is the time frame for the broadband office to work in Point Roberts. Is it like 3 years away from now, or is it a year away from now? And the solution, wireless solution, no solution is good for everybody, and especially timing. Even if you have fiber, everybody may not be able to afford it, because we haven't heard that how much the household has to pay. If it is $1,000 to connect, like this is the barrier, even with Comcast and other people who already have fiber. So affordability is another issue. The wireless solution is the intermediate solution. It's never been either or solution. And I think that those people are in a unique position. They're cut off from the mainland, and their economy, their other considerations. So whatever county and the local citizen decide, I don't want to do, I rather prefer to do it inside the broadband office or broadband people. But I have been kind of pushed back a little bit that this is not what you guys want to do, which is fine. There could be different solutions in our community. But nothing will be done in isolation or in competition. I just wanted to make it sure that everybody hears directly from me. This is a thing that we need to serve that community, and that community has unique characteristics. And if we can give them the best solution in 5 years, we probably are really ignoring them at this point of time. So that's all I want to add to this. Thank you.
So if I may, commissioners, I can't give you any assurances on the timeline. I can only tell you what we intend to do and what we hope will happen. So our intention is to apply for a fiber grant that would include the final mile out in Point Roberts. So we would actually have service to the home. And so that depends on a lot of things. One, we think we've got the grant application ready to go, or at least the raw data, so we can fill out the grant application. And we're going to put that in for the next round of funding. If we're successful in getting that, we would probably have the grant funding awarded, I would think, early second quarter next year, mid-second, like April, May next year, something like that. And now that's where it's really speculative on my part, because I'm saying, here's what I think the state's going to be able to do. And we thought they were going to drop this NOFO in May. And here we are in mid-September, and we still haven't seen it. And in fact, they're asking for more information before they drop the NOFO. So when I tell you that at this moment in time, I anticipate an award in April or May, recognize that that's speculative on my part, and it may in fact be earlier or later, and I don't have any control over that. So then the second part is I'm anticipating that our proposal will be successful. And if it's successful and it ends up being awarded in April or May, we probably see construction start late at the end of 2023 and build out through 2024. So you'd be looking at roughly 24 months from now, and we'd have fiber to the home for most addresses, if not all addresses in Point Roberts. So that's if everything goes well.
So my question is, with this fiber to the home solution that you're talking about for Point Roberts, who are the ISPs that we would be partnering with out there, and how many would there be? Or is
Right
this
now,
a
I think
similar
it's just
model
Whidbey-Tel out there, isn't
It's
it?
just Whidbey-Tel. So we'd be basically using the same model that we're using with Pogo Zone, but with Whidbey-Tel.
Yeah, there'd be some kind of agreement with the ISP, an IRU type agreement that's yet to be negotiated because we haven't seen the NOFO. We don't know even what's going to be required. So,
But
that would be the intent.
To touch on Sat Paul's point though, with the if we did work with Whidbey-Tel to do fiber to the home, we would put a service level agreement in place related to affordability, correct? Or I mean, pretty much all of these, talk about what kind of service level agreement you think we would use in Point Roberts and how that might impact affordability.
So typically we essentially contract in the IRU with the capital installation. And then it's between the customer and the ISP to establish the service level.
Oh,
so we would not specify that it's gigabit for $70, or anything like that. Our objective is to get the capital facilities installed so that the broadband communication can happen, and that it then be between the customer and the ISP. And typically, the ISP will offer different levels of service for different price points, and that's their business model.
Okay, Sat Paul.
I have sorry, thank you. I have a very quick question, Chris, that is it okay to assume that when the broadband office connects the fiber to the homes, Point Roberts or in the county as well, that there will be no initial connection cost to the person? But what I heard is there could be a $500 to $2,000 one-time fee for people to connect. What is the broadband office's estimates right now on that? I'm not looking for exact number or something, or I'm just asking, is it for free? And then ISP charges on top of that? Or is it for ISP to charge that money? Because we are putting the capital dollar, we means our broadband office is putting the capital dollars, bringing the cable, and there is still connection. Or if the ISP is doing the last mile or connection to the house, is there a capital charge for that, a one-time fee?
So I'm gonna make a quick answer, and then I'm gonna defer to Andrew, who actually knows more about this. But my understanding is that the ISP is gonna still charge for anything they have to do inside the house. And typically there are charges for that equipment. What that is, I think, varies by ISP to ISP, and I think it also varies within what service level the customer contracts for. Andrew?
That's a great, or that's exactly correct. The fiber funding is to bring the fiber all the way to the side of the house, and then the ISP takes it from there. So that's what happens.
Yeah, we're trying to knock as much of the capital out of the process as possible, so that this ends up being a cost-effective solution for virtually all customers that are out there. And like I said, most of the ISPs have a low-income offering that specifies a modest service level for a very low price. I've heard from Xfinity, Comcast, as low as $10 a month for certain levels of service.
Thank you.
I have one more question about the service level agreement and affordability. So, Andrew, for example, in Skagit, didn't you have a $70 per gigabit max in your service level agreements? Is that right?
There are examples around the state, yes, where the same model that the port has been pursuing has been successful, and that we're talking about applying to areas of Whatcom County, including Point Roberts. Your committed private partner typically signs, a letter that signifies that you submit to the grant that they'll provide gigabit services for less than $100 a month, for example. And in some communities that's 70. And if you qualify for the Affordable Connectivity Program and you get $30 off, you're at a pretty reasonable rate for your broadband services. So yes, but that's to be negotiated ISP to ISP and per project, around. But across the state, that is an example of gigabit services for less than $100 a month.
Well, you two are the experts here, but I want to make a plug for, we're providing a lot of public dollars to help make this infrastructure a reality. And I want to always be on the side of the public, right? So if we're able to negotiate with them, maybe it's not $70, maybe it's a little bit more than that, but I think ensuring that we're giving our citizens the best deal possible. And I know that we need to attract the private ISPs, and we can't have so many rules that we scare them away. But I do think there's a balance. And I think having those service level agreements, even if we agree to renegotiate them every year or 2 years, it helps provide a level of protection that makes me feel better in the role that I'm in. So I wanted to put that plug out there.
I think one thing that I heard that was kind of, it reoriented my thinking, because I've always kind of thought small about telecom, what do you have to do to serve people locally? And when we talked to the Xfinity representative, he said, look, if you guys knock all the capital out of the way so that we can serve a market, we'll serve them at our national prices. And so as they move to 10 gigabit service, which is their new national standard, that'll be at some national rate. And that's literally how they look at it. So if they have access to a community, they're going to give the best price that they can give nationwide to everybody in the nation. And so what we're trying to do is knock the capital out of the way so that they have access to that national pricing. And, so that was an interesting thing from Xfinity Comcast. Widbytel they're more my kind of thinking. They're relatively small telecom, and they kind of think locally. So they may have different flexibility than Xfinity. I think Xfinity, it is what it is. You go on their website and look up their national prices, and that's what they're going to offer. And so I think the bigger ISPs that are players at the national level are going to have a structure of pricing that they're going to maintain regardless of what community they're in.
That makes sense. I mean, I think the issue though is we've all been told that we're going to get one price from the private telecoms, and then we end up with another one. And so I think that there's just some benefit to the community from having prices in a legal framework like a service level agreement, just so that there's transparency about it, and it gives us just a little bit more control. One of the benefits of these programs is that we have a little bit more local control over how telecom works in our community, and so we shouldn't give up opportunities to help shape the market. That's my 2 cents on it.
Sure, thank you. We heard.
Commissioner Deshmani and Commissioner Murphy, any other comments?
I have 2 other items, both of them comments, but I'll wait if there's any questions. Okay, so the first comment is regarding, and it's a little bit of a repetition from the last meeting, but because Commissioner Grant wasn't on the last meeting, I just want to repeat the comment. And that's that I really am grateful for our team's capability with mapping, particularly as it coincides with the increased resolution of coverage information that's not being required by the FCC. And I'm really very happy that we are well equipped to turn that data into something which will dramatically increase our ability to serve those that are unserved, that the ISPs claim they serve, as well as some depth of service into the underserved. And the higher resolution mapping combined with the new state and federal thresholds for what's considered acceptable level of service are opening up a brand new door that it will take us some time to exploit in terms of both seeking funding and working with communities. But, and the fruit of that will probably not show up for several months. But I just wanted to repeat how important that is because as a commissioner, I have for some time now recognized that the low-hanging fruit of unserved by the previous FCC blocking was a step in the right direction, but nowhere near enough. And so as we improve our resolution of who's actually unserved and underserved, particularly underserved below what's reasonable in terms of service, I'm really excited about the new opportunities that we have. And one of the challenges will be funding models, because this money from the federal government will run out. And it's really important we develop funding models. And that's not part of any of the studies we're doing yet. But certainly in the future year, we need to identify funding models for a process of ongoing deployment. Process of ongoing PUD. Let's make an acronym. For fiber. That is not something that we're going to do over 1 year or 2 years, but that is a continuous deployment that will go on for a decade or maybe longer. You know, these mapping tools should hopefully identify those gaps of service that will allow us to continually, and it's that constant pressure, not impatient pressure, but that constant, persistent effort of an infrastructure organization, of which what's what the PUD is. We are an infrastructure organization, and we should be all about not taking short, low-hanging fruit type action, just that, but also having a long-term process for building infrastructure and maintaining infrastructure exceptionally well that puts a constant pressure on the private sector to serve everyone well, and you know, addresses the needs of the community. So that's one comment. The other comment is new for I haven't just mentioned before. I have a dear friend, my best friend from college. His name is Tom, and Tom was a better student than me, also an electrical engineer, smart. I mean, we competed like heck, and he went the direction of telecom. And he, since graduating from college, has been promoting wireless technology and wireless technologies to serve communities. And in my last and he's been a great resource for me. And in my last conversation with him, I was struck by his comments. And that's, I said, Atul, I've been promoting wireless infrastructure my whole life, professional life. However, it's my opinion that we have to focus on fiber and fiber to the home. And the reason is because it's the only future-proof solution. Now, Tom is probably the smartest guy I've ever known. And he wasn't just book smart. He was one of those people that was incredibly hardworking and incredibly dedicated. And he helped found companies. He worked for large telecoms. He helped found companies on the subject. I'm just saying is that it's impactful to me to hear that from a guy like him. And obviously because of the personal relationship, I put a high regard in his opinion. So I wanted to share that.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
commissioners.
Andrew, Chris, anything else under the broadband program update?
For me.
No, I think we're up to date.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you to both of you for the good
Thanks.
updates and discussion. And we will move on to new business. And the first item under new business is the Cherry Point Development Study. And we have County Executive Sat Paul Sadhu with us. So I will hand the microphone over to him. Welcome again to our commission meeting.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting my request to come into this meeting and talk about this thing. I know the COVID has kind of kept us apart for last 2 years, and especially on some of the things I wanted to do starting in 2020, but that's how the world works. It's, nature has its own plans. And we are back in here, and I see that the opportunity for Whatcom County in Cherry Point is huge. But this is not a simple matter. It is complex, and I think there are landowners. Of course, there's lamination, of course, Port, PUD, Whatcom County. All these people have to come together to do something there. We know that the fourth pier is out of question now. So that kind of has its own impacts, good or bad, but that's what it is. And that fight is over. So I think the future fight is about clean industry. And that's where our future is going to lie. Not only us as Whatcom County, but us as a nation. That's where the world is going. And these things happen over time. It's not something that we can turn around in 1 to 5 years. This is something, commitments we have to make for next 20, 40 years. And that's where I am. I was hoping that before today, I would have had a meeting with the lamination, but it didn't happen for different reasons. Chairman's schedule and my schedule, we couldn't meet. I was there at their council yesterday for a very different reason, but there was no time to discuss this item. But I have a schedule very soon. I'll be talking to him at this subject, but I wanted to talk to PUD. We have a unique opportunity, not only in Whatcom County, but in whole I-5 corridor. There's no other place with that kind of zoning and that amount of single chunk of land available. Now, there are only a couple of owners, large owners right now. And in talking with the owners, they are also ready to do something. And they're willing to be participants. And this is not only for the vacant land. I've been in touch with the current large industries, BP, P66. Of course, Alcoa is not there anymore. And they are very much willing to do that. Now, the recent new player, AltaGas, which is a new version of petrol gas, and they have some permitting difficulties, some SEPA issues, and their emissions issues with Northwest Clean Air and Whatcom County. So we are working through those things. But one thing we should remember that when Alcoa left, they sold all their land to AltaGas. Just the land which is under the buildings is the only one left, which belongs to that Intelco plant, and closing down everything. All the other land is now in the hands of AltaGas. So they will also be a significant influencer or player in this overall picture. I don't know what their plans are. I had met with their top management in my office a while ago, but this has stopped us going further because of the current environmental and permitting difficulties and other things, which is kind of public knowledge. So you guys can read about it. Now, coming back to this, I see that PUD has a critical point to decide what are you going to be? What are you going to be? I can't say when you grow up, you've already grown up, but where are you going to be in next 20, 40 years? It's important. If power is also not in abundance, like we always thought, oh, there's a lot of power in Northwest. I don't think so. And it has been exposed, especially with Blue Wolf coming in and Alcoa trying to renew their power agreement. And in conversations with BPA, I just had a conversation at a private ladder on the Alcoa from the BPA, and end up talking to them. Power is not in abundance, and the power BPA has is all green power, but the power the other powers, renewable energy, has been very slow growth, what we would like to, and the surplus of power. And same as with British Columbia, then have been no new dams or other things worked out, or they are also behind on the renewable energy. And the demand for power is going to be, so this is a big issue for PUD for future growth, to look at where the power is going to come from. You have unlimited water. I can tell you that. Whatever water adjudication will do, we don't know, but PUD has plenty of water. Now broadband, I'm really glad that PUD took steps and be in the forefront of broadband. And we as a county are very happy that you are working with PUD to take on this big task. And this is going to be more technology driven. And like Atul said, I agree that getting fiber to every home is the ultimate, but technology has stumped us in many ways in the past, and especially in technology, 5 years is a long time ago, which we are not used to in our lifetimes, that things can change in 5 years so much. And this the EV world, if you look at the power needs in California, power needs in Washington and other places, if all the automotive vehicles turn into electric, that's not the only field. The other things as well, electrified, I think the demand for power is going to grow. The other part is the stormwater and sewer in Cherry Point. I think that's another thing we need to look at in PowerPoint. So what I'm coming back to is that we should initiate this Cherry Point study. I don't want to just do a study, just identify what we need. I think we have lived here long enough, or our institution's been here long enough. We really know what we need. What we really need is get to a 30% design so that we become eligible for EDA grant. So talking to EDA, of course, and this Alcoa thing was happening. We talked to their office in Seattle. They said we are eligible for a $10 million grant to build the infrastructure in Cherry Point, but we are not eligible right now as we sit. We have to have some kind of a plan, a document, a study with a 30% design, so that it is something that actionable study. So actionable study is going to cost us, I don't know the number, I would just throw up in the air and say, okay, $1.5 million, maybe a good number. And it seems like it is a good number, but I'm not saying that that's the only, if it would need another couple of $100,000, we shouldn't shy away because otherwise the first $1.5 million will be waste if we don't do a good job on this. So in that matter, I think that I met with the Department of Commerce when VIDA conference was going on a couple of 3 weeks ago, and they have up to $500,000 available for the study, what we are saying. And I have asked Don Goldberg to get in touch with them and put a little first ask with them. And he's working with them. And I would like to put a letter together to Department of Commerce to ask for that $500,000. And I talked to Port, Rob, and Rob said they are in, and they will be putting some money. Of course, Whatcom County is in. And we have talked to the landowners, and I've talked to BP and P66 also. They have not committed anything, but they support any new development, any new work done in Cherry Point. I think it benefits everybody. So the biggest part of this is lamination, because it is their cultural resources on that land. And there's a lot of sensitivities, and I want to approach them. This is what my past discussion with lamination has been. That so far, lamination has not taken a stand that this is what they want. They know when to say no, but they have no idea when to say yes. So it's been going project by project. Green apple come, then they have discussions about green apple. A hydrogen plant guy comes, then they will have discussion with hydrogen plant guy. This Alcoa Blue Wolf come, then they have talks with Blue Wolf. I think what I'm asking them on everybody's behalf or behalf of the county, that why don't they come up with a white paper where they can clearly define, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. This is the 5 things we will never like to see there. Or these are the 5 things we would really like to see there. And there are things in between that we can work with. I think that we do need that clarity as overall community. This is not only for county. I think this is for PUD, this is for Port, this is for all of us and private citizens and newcomers to our county for economic development. All the city mayors also, I have brought this up with them as well, including Bellingham. And they also see that this clarity is needed. So I am trying my best to move this conversation further, to get them on board on the Cherry Point study, as well as overall policy from lamination. It's a wide subject because of the vessel trips and the railroads and things. But in future industries, there may be different problems. Some of these basic transportation problems are not going to go away, and we're going to have to face them. We're going to have to solve them. At the same time, there has been an approach which has been shared that maybe what we should do is out of that 1,500 acres or the total 7,000 acres there, that we should create an 100-acre lamination cultural park of sorts, and create a cultural resource there so that they have a place which they call their own and build their building, as well as if there are cultural resources found on the rest of the land, they can be relocated. I don't know. I don't want to go very far with this idea in the sense that this is something for them to decide, not for us to decide. But I think that solution has been, one of this has been, idea has been given to them, that we, county and all the other partners would support something like this so that they have a permanent presence, as well as there has been talk about that if the new industries come in, there could be some job things, promises and provisions for lamination residents to be able to participate in that. So I don't know what form it will take, So this is where I have asked directly that maybe PUD should come up with $500,000 because your future depends on it and your future growth depends on it. And you need to be the lead people, lead agency for this purpose. I'm not just saying that you got to just take it what I say. I just want to have a starter somewhere. You got to start something. I can't go, ambiguous request. I wanted to just put a very direct request. And if we get $500,000 from the state Department of Commerce, then we will come up with the other $500,000, or if more money that we can between Port, us, and the private landowners, we can raise that money. And I totally believe that the benefit to PUD will exceed many, many times more over the future. Now, the other topic I want to bring up with that, which I kind of alluded to, what role PUD would like to do in future in our community. Now, I see some opportunities. I don't know the commission has thought about these things or think in those terms or not. What you are doing was the necessity, and you were able to do that, provide some water, provide some power, and these ratepayers have funded your organization, and that's where it has been all along for last. I know I came here 35 years ago and built a company in Cherry Point, and PUD was very nice with us. They got us water and power. But what is going to happen in the next 20 or 40 years is important. I think that PUD need to think about creating capacity and creating depth in your functions. Functions like you have taken up broadband, I think this is a welcome step, but you need to build more capacity and more depth in these areas, and even in the power side. And same goes with storm and sewer. How PUD can impact, because the other thing which you may not have thought through, water. PUD is a natural organization to manage the water in Whatcom County in future. Water adjudication thing is going on. I don't see that you participating only from the perspective of what is your share of water and how you articulate that. But I see that if we together come up with an agreement, there is going to be an agreement, no matter how much money we spend on the legal, and that goes for both tribes and goes for private people as well. Go ahead, Chris. You have a question?
Well, I was just going to offer to my commissioners, what Sat Paul's talking about sounds an awful lot like all the discussions we had around the strategic plan and its creation. And what I would propose is just to meet with Sat Paul offline, because it's probably about a 2-hour conversation, and walk him through where we are on our strategic plan and just get his input and thoughts. I think that it aligns very well with what he's talking about. And, it's very much in line with the guidance that you guys gave me, which went into the creation of our strategic plan. So with that, I'd just like to offer that up as, an opportunity. I can go ahead and meet with Sat Paul. We can schedule a time, just the two of us, and bring him up to speed and get his input.
Good, Chris. I take you up on that offer, and we'll do that. But at the same time, I wanted this opportunity to share my thoughts with commissioners. And I know time is almost 9 o'clock. I have a council meeting today as well. But I just wanted to give you this idea that ultimately in the water negotiations, we're going to end up with some kind of agreement. Is it a water bank? Is it a water trust? Is it some other form of organization? No matter what we do, we have a groundwater and we have a surface water, and we have water quality, and we have infrastructure to manage these things. And could be, I think that if we think about a $500 million to $1 billion investment over 25 years into water resources is not unthinkable, It's possible. Because where we are heading for our agriculture, for the needs of the tribes and climate resiliency, all these things going to need a lot of water resources. And who could be a better manager of this function? But this can't function if you guys don't dream about it. I want the commissioners to dream about it and pass on that dream to your staff and do this and take an active role in this. I'm here maybe another 4 years, I'll be gone, and organizations stay. But we need to set up a vision, a goal, and rightly so, Chris. I was not aware that you guys are working on a strategic plan. I would love to do that, and maybe I will love to come back to the council meeting, to the commission meeting some other time. But please do talk about this Cherry Point study soon, and your commitment soon. If you have some difficulties, whatever, let's share it together. And because I would like to make that application sometime in October. The only unknown at this point in time is lamination. And I would really like the lamination signs up on this, on at least this study, because it does not make any other thing, but it just studies what we need to do so that we can do the development. And I will need support from PUD and county and city, all city mayors to accomplish that. So if you guys have any quick questions for me, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Commissioners, Atul?
yeah. So first of all, I don't think a county executive has ever come to the PUD and raised this issue, and I applaud you for doing so, first of all.
Thank you.
And as you well know, there's many things that you've championed that are cross-functional, cross-organizational, that are tedious and bear fruit very slowly. But I applaud you for this kind of long-term thinking, because even though it's tedious and sometimes doesn't bear fruit in the near term, I think it's the right approach. So I want to applaud you for bringing this to the PUD. And yes, we have adopted a strategic plan. And not only we adopted a strategic plan, we have a process for continually improving our strategic plan. So it's not in stone. It's always, there's room for improvement. But I'd like to quickly identify 4 items which I know are not in the strategic plan to your benefit. So, so when you meet with Chris, I think these are 4 topics that you probably want to bring up. The first is marine impacts. The tribes themselves are most of all concerned about marine impacts, nearshore environment, most importantly. And through the proposal by REG in partnership with P66, it was something that got addressed a little bit later in the process than would have been ideal. And I have specific ideas which I won't discuss now, but we meet regularly, and I'll bring those up in our next time we have to meet. On how to address the marine impacts issue. And then of course there's the land. The second point is the land impacts. The land impacts is definitely land use. It's definitely outside the scope of the PUD. And historic preservation, archaeological concerns, and archaeological concerns are also like anthropologic family concerns too. So like one of the reasons that it's hard that I've discovered after speaking to folks like Commissioner Michael Shepard at the port and others who understand a lot about these issues, is that it's very family and community specific. So it's not like there's a particular person on staff at Natural Resources at the tribe who can speak to all the family related impacts of development. It's quite a complex community response. And but I have ideas about that too. And then the other two issues are really very specific to PUD, and that's water supply. And that you did a great job of introducing the complexity of water supply. But we have a lot of water and a lot of contracted water that can be, that's currently under a take or pay agreement. And it's definitely in the pay category. So there's a lot of potential take in the take or pay agreement that we have. And then the fourth and perhaps from the PUD's perspective, the most important is energy supply. And as it relates to energy supply, I think the thing that's become really clear to me is that we must think about adaptive load. And I'd like to conclude with that, of the 4 points. And what adaptive load means, we can discuss in more detail. But basically, it's recognizing the fact that energy storage and or adaptive load are essential to deal with the variable supply capacity of our increasingly less predictable supply. And for demonstrating both an awareness of the grid and its capacity, and awareness of the new supply sources that are more intermittent, all of that, we have to think about adaptive load. There's a lot of energy if you don't need it all the time, if it's dispatchable. There's a ton of energy. But we have to change our thinking a little bit, and that's not easy. Everybody wants to define boundary conditions, and whenever you make those boundary conditions of supply fuzzy or adaptive, it's not pleasant for most engineers. I'm an engineer. I want to know what my box is. When you tell me my box is not well defined, I complain. So I want to share those 4 points, and none of those really are addressed and some of them may be addressed at a higher level. And some of the things you're bringing up are relevant to strategic plan, but some of the things you're bringing up are also have a lot to do with the details, which are equally important as high level thinking. So thank you again.
Thank you. I look forward to more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Satpal.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and let's continue our discussion on this matter.
We will.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I wanted to make sure that we just talk a little bit about when we're going to have a follow-up discussion about the executive's request. So do we want to have a little bit more discussion right now, or should we plan on having this as an agenda item on our September 27th meeting? And that might also give staff some time to put a memo together, thinking through, maybe even have some more conversations. Chris, are you raising your hand? It's hard to see you.
I am. I'm not on Zoom, so
Yeah.
that's how I have to raise my hand.
Yeah. Great.
Physically.
Go ahead.
So first of all, I do want to point out that while Satpal was completely correct that there's some long-term benefit to water and electric growth in the Cherry Point area that would accrue to the utility and its current customers. The vast majority of the value that's going to be created in this effort, like 99%, is going to flow to the landowners of today. So having a development plan available allows them to sell the property and develop it, and that's where the profit is made. So I would just kind of urge you to think about that in terms of, we can get grant money perhaps from the state and from other agencies. But I think we need to really focus on what it is that the PUD can afford and what value accrues directly to our customers long term that would essentially be defensible. So what I would propose is I'll come back next time and I'll give you here's what we've looked at in terms of what would be affordable. And even affordable may have some slight rate impacts. So we've got to bear that in mind. And on the electric side, of course, all of the costs would accrue to a single customer. So any allocation that we have, electric versus water, and then on the water side, I would assume that the value would not accrue to the Grandview system. So we wouldn't allocate costs there, but it would accrue to our industrial and perhaps irrigation systems. So we would allocate costs there. So give us a little time to get that together and give you a potential rate impact analysis on it. And I think our next meeting would be enough time to do that.
Okay, great, because I believe Paul said that there's an October deadline that they're looking at. So let's plan on putting that under old business on our September 27th meeting. Any other discussion or questions from my fellow commissioners? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I was pleased that Paul's, as other county executives have come to the PUD in the past. So we have had others here. And in my 24 years here, it's always been an area that everybody's been trying to figure out, Cherry Point. And we do have developers interested in Cherry Point over the years. In fact, even lately, we still have people calling in, checking up. But for some reason, Cherry Point has a black eye to developers, and they all tend to back away from it. Millions of dollars have been spent by developers who've had to walk away, losing that money. It comes down to such things as there is electrical needs out there, grid, there is industrial water needs, sewer needs, potable water needs, there is road issues. Roads are real big out there. There's zoning questions, and permits are killing the developers out there. This county is not kind to people who want to develop out there. If you want them, then the county the county council is going to have to make some leadway for these people to develop out here. They're not going to spend millions only to be turned away. No one seems to be able to agree on what that area should be for. Our county is very split on that. So I would caution before we spend any large amount of money to find out what's 5 good reasons or bad reasons for developing that area. I think there's a lot more than that. I think it's going to have to come from the government, starting with the county council, and fall through everyone to come decide what do we really want out there? How do we support it? And there are a lot of studies done on that area already. They're just gathering dust on shelves somewhere. So a lot of money's been spent already on that. So I would just caution.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
So just from an economic development point of view, I've been involved in these things forever. And there's 2 kind of bookends that you can look at. The one is a master plan development or a master plan community where everything's laid out and this area is zoned industrial, this is zoned heavy industrial, here's kind of the preliminary street, sewer, power, telecom layout, and you do all that. And then the developer just goes in and sells parcels. And that's the one extreme. The other extreme is an area that's raw land that has no plan and it develops piecemeal. So, those are kind of the 2 extremes. So far, Cherry Point has developed at the one extreme, which is the piecemeal development. And while I appreciate the idea of developing a master plan, I'm not confident that you can actually get everybody committed to it in any kind of reasonable time frame. And I mean, you may be looking at 5 to 10 years to get everybody to, especially the Lummi, to come in and say, yeah, here's what we want. I think, one at a time, they're very willing to say, we don't want this. And we found that. So I would just, caution you not to think about this as an all one way or all the other. I think we're going to have work on some kind of a master plan in parallel with some piecemeal development, and that ultimately is how the thing is going to work out.
Well, Christine and O'Toole, would you like to have some history about Cherry Point to find out what's been done by the PUD and others? And then it may help you to decide on where we should go, because you may be asking the staff here to travel down the same path that they've been down many times already. And it's just a waste of their time and stuff. So I know Steve and others have a lot, and Chris, I know you're learning real quick. So there's probably a lot of good information just here. John has a lot of information of Cherry Point too, that we could have a workshop to be brought up real quick on what we should and shouldn't do, if you wish. Your call.
Absolutely. And thanks for, doing what you do, which is bringing all of your experience to the table, Mike. I had no idea. I knew that there was some work that done, but I'm so glad that you're bringing that to the table. So.
Would the next meeting be too soon to do that, to have a workshop around this?
Well, I actually would suggest that we have a separate work session with no resolution to come out of it, but just an educational workshop that we can schedule sometime some afternoon and take a couple of hours just on that topic. Of course, it'll be a called meeting and all, but it'll be a special called meeting. So that would be the only item. Otherwise, it's going to, we're going to end up with commission meetings that run 5-6 hours. And I don't mind that. It's just, I would just suggest to you guys to look at a separate workshop to look at educational things like this.
Okay, so keep the item on our next meeting agenda. The September 27th meeting will still have a follow-up discussion about the executive's request, but then maybe a longer work session related to Cherry Point broadly and some of the history behind what the PUD has already done over the kind of in recent history.
Yeah, with the commission's permission, what I'll do is I'll work with Steve, I'll work with John, I'll work with Mike. And I know of several studies that have been done that Steve's already shared with me, and I'm sure I've only seen the tip of the iceberg. And we can get something together in the next 3-4 weeks that would be an in-depth dive for you guys. That doesn't alter my commitment to bring to you, here's essentially what we could afford on our next commission meeting, so we can respond to the county executive's proposal.
And I don't need to say this, I'm sure you're thinking about this. It's obviously staying in touch with our customers about this subject, because I'm sure they care about the subject. And but the question is, what they feel about this particular issue, because they would be one of the benefactors of this kind of a study, hopefully. So
to some degree, the benefit would accrue to them, and we can make an assessment as to what degree. So at some point you got to monetize that and really think about it.
Yeah, like there's certainly elements like potential hydrogen supply where it would really be nicely dovetailed. So, but there's other areas where it wouldn't be. But yeah.
Yeah, and I would just like to remind you guys that when we talked about the strategic plan in specific, remember we were talking about large rapid growth of the electric system under one model, and then the other model was incremental growth. And we talked specifically about service territory along our 115 line, which is in fact Cherry Point. So that, what I want to share with Satpal is those discussions that we had leading up to the strategic plan, because I think it's exactly the mirror image of what he's talking about. And I think he'll be glad to know that we're thinking the same way. The other thing is it'll be a great time for me to bring forward the idea of, us as an organization that can help the county when a small water district or water association is in some kind of physical or financial trouble, and they need somebody that can help at least analyze the situation, figure out what to do about it. So that's one of my to-dos that's been on the strategic plan, is to get that out to the county. So it all dovetails. It's just a nice opportunity.
John.
I had one minor just point of correction from executive's presentation mentioned the PUD providing sewer at Cherry Point. The PUD does not have sewer authority to provide sewer services. It would take a vote of the people.
Despite Steve's numerous attempts to get us to be a provider of sewer services.
That's true, in spite of that.
Yeah. He keeps running into my roadblock by saying, well, we got a little issue, got to go to election.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other comments before we move on to our next item on the agenda? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 6B, which is the approval of resolution number 818, amendment to delegation of authority.
Good morning. That would be me.
Hi, good morning.
Hi. Yes, this is kind of a little bit of a change of course here, but in our discussion, especially centering around the Plant One rebuild, we started talking about change orders, and this is, you know, I'm going to lay part of this on Dwayne now that he's gone and he can't defend himself, but he bringing this up. Change orders during big projects are kind of a big thing. And so what I did is I did a survey with some of the other PUDs as to what their general manager's signing authority is. And we were low, we were really low. So what I'm presenting, and it's a two-part, both in the delegation of authority and the purchasing policy, is I'm presenting or proposing that we increase Chris's signing authority up to $100,000. That's spelled out in the delegation of authority, and then also changing the language around the change orders a little bit. Previous to this, we had it kind of split up, like if we had bigger projects, we'd do it this way. If we had smaller projects, change order authority was this way. What I'm proposing now is just simplifying it. Give Chris a sign-in authority. That goes across everything. That goes across purchases, that goes across change orders, that goes across all of that. And in order to change that change order language, we need to change both, excuse me, the delegation of authority and also the purchasing policy. That's why they're both here. So that's what I'm proposing. And is there any questions? But that's the only things that we've touched in both the purchasing policy and the delegation of authority, is that change order and then the signing authority. Is there any questions on that?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
So we have had excellent customary practice on this subject over the years, meaning that there even with much smaller authority, the commission has been consistently and steadfastly informed on the next agenda of things like change orders and things that fell well within the discretionary authority of the general manager. I just want to state that I really want to maintain that excellent level of communication as it relates to these kinds of hiccups that happen.
And I don't think the communication necessarily is the lack or lessening the communication is the goal here. It's the timeliness. You know, when we only meet twice a month, if we're in the middle of a big construction project, that could be a big deal. You know, if we're having crews stand around and we're still paying them, that's what we want to and trying to avoid.
Right.
So let me kind of step back a minute and kind of reframe this discussion. So what we were trying to do is, number one, make it so that we didn't have delays. And then the other constraint on it was I wanted to make sure that whoever the signing authority was for a project is notified whenever anything that would require their signing authority is triggered. So that's why, you know, the change order ends up being at the same level that we would take to you for initial authorization. So, you know, the idea is to constrain it so that it makes some kind of sense, so that we couldn't do something within a project that would be greater than we could do, you know, do a change order in a project that was greater than what we could do on our own authority without taking it to you guys in the first place. The second thing is, you know, clearly I want to share with you guys where we are on all of our major projects. And part of that is why I've asked that our operations AGM come and talk to us periodically and update us on those things. And then thirdly, things that happen that are important around here, I let you guys know, and I promised you I will continue doing that. I know Steve did it before me, and the record is clear. GMs, back to the beginning, do that. I have an obligation to keep you guys informed, and I take that to heart.
Thanks, Chris. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, Mike.
I do.
Great. Go ahead.
Okay, here I come, Annette.
I knew you'd say something.
Reading this, it says in preparing for the water treatment plant 1 rebuild. So I'm looking at this more, it's that for the future than for today's or everyday work, business. The PUDs that are here are for representing how much they get, the general manager gets with them. They're a lot larger than us. We're very unique here. I mean, we have like roughly 5, basically less than, 5 big customers, where a lot of these that are here have 30, 50 to maybe even 100,000 customers. So I could see the need to have a bigger budget for the general managers to spend. I felt that the 50,000 fell within everyday needs around here. However, if we're just talking about the water treatment plant number 1, I could see going to 100,000 with that project coming up. So I understand that one. I think if Dwayne was here, he'd have a big smile on his face, because the next thing I want to talk about is change orders. He knows how I feel about change orders. 20%, change orders can exceed up to 20%, and then the commissioners will be notified. Well, we're talking $60 million to do this plant 1, and we're talking 20% of that can be spent before the commissioners even know about it. I mean, the whole idea behind the change orders is because something got missed by the architects and engineers, and we pay a lot of money to have these things drafted, and then all of a sudden to find out, whoops, we forgot to put that in there. So there's a $500,000 project or something like that, change order. So I am concerned about the 20% when you're talking $60 million.
Well, I mean, first of all, no individual change order over $100,000 would be in my signature. It would come back to the commission. So, if there was a change order that required a $500,000 change, I would bring that directly to you for authorization, and that would just wait. The second thing is that I will be informing you whenever we do change orders, and I will not allow the thing to get to where it's near 20% without coming back to you for revising the project scope.
The thing is that when we make a motion, we approve something, we base it on the information that we are given and what is written here. So we are agreeing to what is written here, and the words say one thing and you're saying another thing. So I like what you're saying. You'll come to us and talk to us, but this is actually saying you have authority to go up to 20% before you even notify us.
But the most I can do on an incremental basis is $100,000. So on a $60 million project, 20% obviously be $12 million, but that would be 120 change orders under my authority. And that's,
so why would it be written this way then? Why is it worded this way?
Well,
When it limits you at 100,000, but it gives you.
Because if you look at, for instance, you've got to reroute a pipe and it's going to be $75,000 to reroute the pipe. So I can have a special called meeting and get you guys here within 48 hours to authorize it. And we'll have those crews sitting around for 2 days that we're paying,
And I'm not questioning the $100,000 when it comes to the building of plant 1. How do you defend the 20% before you have to notify us?
Well, first of all, that's consistent language throughout the industry. And one thing I do want to point out with these PUDs, we are comparable to them in an important metric. And that's that these are PUDs that actually do projects that we're talking about $30 to $60 million. And that's kind of the key key metric, not necessarily number of customers or even cash flow. It's, given that these organizations tackle these projects, how are they organized to do it? And this reflects that, and it will still be the lowest among them.
Yeah. And again, I said, the way it's written here, preparing for the water treatment plant 1 rebuild. I can understand the $100,000 in that kind of a project. But most of the time around here, everyday work, you don't even get close to probably even $50,000. So what you're asking us is for us to change it from 50 to 100,000 for all work done in the PUD. Is that correct?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
So I don't mind 100,000 for the treatment plant 1 rebuild. We are hearing numbers of $60 million to do that. I do question the change order of 20% because good engineering and architects should never be, in my estimate, more than 5% change order. Otherwise, somebody didn't do their work right. We start crossing past that. So I don't know.
I think I have a couple comments on that, Commissioner Murphy, and I would say the plant 1 rebuild is kind of the impetus for making these changes and proposing these changes. But it would, as you say, apply to everything. So if we're doing a $100,000 project, 20% is still a lot, huge, and I agree with you, that's a big percentage, but that's a $20,000 change. It's not always mistakes and missed. One of the biggest ones is when we did the addition here to the office, they rip off the cabinets and all of a sudden we have the rainbow color of mold on the wall. That wasn't a mistake. That was just something that we could not foresee. And so we had a big change order around that to mitigate that on all that mold. A lot of times, and especially with all these supply chain issues, a lot of that, what we've been seeing is mistakes. And I think you're right in that. But what I'm trying to do here is simplify it going forward so everybody can easily remember it. That's part of it. And then also get us up closer to kind of industry standards that we can be a bit more efficient. What we could do, proposed, is change that 20% to a lower percentage, if that's what you would like. That is one proposal we could make, change. But this is kind of from the examples I had, I kind of went conservative. So like Chris said, we're still on the very low side of all those examples, but get closer to the middle there.
I guess this point on your language in the delegation of authority, if I recall the right document, we won't exceed 20% of the contract. So if you had a $100,000 contract, change order limit is 20,000.
Right.
Commissioner just yeah, he's had his hand up for a little while.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Yeah,
So-
I would like to hear from the two of you. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'd had the impression by reviewing the agreement that it was 20% or 100,000, whichever is less kind of feeling. But I don't know if John has any thoughts on the subject to how to address Commissioner Murphy's concern. But maybe some minor changes in the language could help address it.
I think the first is that in the, I think it's delegation of authority, it says it shall not exceed 20% of the contract price, which is a curb right there. And that if you have a $100,000 contract, the GM can't exceed a $20,000 change order without going to the commission. The other thing is that you could expressly say that the GM is going to notify the commission of any approved change order. So at least in the general manager's report, there's a formal requirement that the commission be notified. It's certainly politically wise for a general manager to notify the commission of any change order that's authorized, whether there's a formal notification requirement or not. It'd tend to be career suicide to not notify the commission of
Thank
those
you for
things.
reminding me of that. I just want to go back to the mechanics of how this is going to work out. So as John pointed out, for the smaller contracts, my authority would not be $100,000, it would be less. And in fact, it would only be maxed out at 100,000 for contracts of $500,000 or less. Beyond that, it's a smaller percentage of the contract that's available. For a $60 million contract, the percentage that I could authorize on my own is, gosh, someone do the math, at 1/4% more or less of the contract, because it's $100,000. So it's, you know, on a percentage basis, the contract, it's very, very small for the larger contracts. You know, and my commitment to you guys is I will bring them all back to you. And if it's a scope issue where we've got to, you know, we need to do this particular thing in order to get us to next week, but that gets us to a larger scope change, I would be bringing that back to you guys for reauthorization. That we've got a scope change in the project, and here's what that's going to do to project cost and schedule. And you know, it's always scope, schedule, and budget, those three things on project management.
I'm turning to the other two commissioners to tell me what their thoughts are. We are obligated, well, mainly to our customers, but also to the community. Though the community, we do not have any, we're not using our tax authority. So really the community is not, we're not have to answer to the voters as much, but they do put the commissioners into office. So they do have some say. So I just want us to be very sure and wise when it comes to spending money, how we do that. So
My thoughts, Commissioner Murphy, are, well, first of all, I appreciate your questions and the discussion. You know, looking at the other GM authorization limits that Annette put in the memo, you know, our revenue is actually, I didn't look for all of them, but our revenue is not that much lower than Skagit's, for example. So they have a very different customer base than we do, but you know, we have yeah, I mean, I think their revenue is only like 5 million more than ours, but so I think we're in the ballpark compared to, you know, our sister PUDs. So I did just want to mention that because you brought up some concerns about whether we're comparing apples to oranges there. And you know, the other feeling that I have on this is just that you know, the delays that both Chris and Annette mentioned can really add up. And so I want to make sure that we're not hamstringing Chris and the staff and creating delays that end up costing our ratepayers even more. Are you feeling, Mike, I'm not sure if you can hear me or what, but do we want to table this? Do you feel like you need more information or more discussion?
I am not concerned with the 100,000 based on, you know, our revenue, others' revenues. I know we do not have the connections that other PUDs have. We, like I said, we're only dealing with probably two major ones, maybe three. But yet I don't see any way that we're stopping any progress or emergencies that need to be done. So things can be done here in our community. And then they were told about it later. The 20%, the way it's written, I really don't support. If it could be worded differently or less percentage, it would make it better for me. But Annette, you said you could lower that to a better number.
How about if we just replace the wherever it's 20% with 20% or 100,000, whichever is less. Now go over replace. Is that okay?
Yeah, we can write it
The
however.
dilemma,
we agree on.
Well, the dilemma is if you do that, if we have a $20,000 contract and a change order for $500 comes back in, we'd have to bring it back to the commission for approval. You gotta be kind of careful how you structure the thing.
I'm sorry. I was saying, oh God, good point. But you know, that, please someone help me with the language. 20% not to exceed 100,000.
I think that is the effect of the language as it's written. That's
Well,
why we.
But I'm just trying
that did it this
to
way.
make sure that Commissioner Murphy feels comfortable with the language. And maybe John, you can help with that.
Well, yeah, it's wordsmithing maybe, but it's the curb lines. I think what people are speaking about are the same here in that there's two curbs, if you will, on limits. One is the individual change order can't exceed $100,000. And there's a cumulative change order limit, which could be 1 or 20 change orders. And that's 20% of the contract price. So if you have a $100,000 contract, you can't have a change order at $100,000 because the cumulative limit for 1 or 20 change orders is 20,000. So, for example, then in that 100,000, if you had a change order that came through that was $1,000 in week 1, and in week 2 there's another change order, that limit that the GM could do would be 19,000. And so there's effectively two curves. One that really comes to light in a large project, that's the 100,000, and the 20,000 is going to be the the 20%, excuse me. The 20% is that which is going to apply to smaller and medium projects functionally, because you know your 50,000, 100, or you know $500,000 projects are going to be capped cumulatively at 20%.
So I think
So that was the one issue was the amount, and the other issue was notification. And you can we can add a sentence that says you're obligated to notify it during the GM's report.
You know, we can go ahead.
I think what you guys are saying, John and Chris, is that basically hey, if I come to you with 120 requests for, is that the right number? For $100,000, you guys are gonna know something's up and that we need to reevaluate the project. Basically, your point.
There's that, but so let me propose something here that for all projects, we'll just keep a running tally of all of the change orders and give that to you every month. Period. Just give it to you. And it'll just be part of our monthly, it'll be part of the package. And that way you guys will be able to see if I'm not getting back to you on a project that you want to hear about, it'll be right there and you can say, what's going on with this?
It's a great part of the
That way,
operation.
if I have,
That could be part of
our monthly
operations.
report.
I mean, it's up to you, Chris, how you want to handle it, but that could be part of your operations report too.
I think we could just have it as a separate standalone sheet that
However-
Annette could generate. Yeah, I mean, there's also, you want to make sure that there's a disinterested third party. So Annette's not involved with issuing any of the change orders and all that.
Okay.
So it'd be better to come from her periodically, just track projects, track all the change orders that are on them and just give that to you every month. And we'll work out the format. We'll give you a sample of the format next meeting, just so that you can see what that might look like. But would that help, Mike?
So are we still going to leave the language that's written in here regarding accumulated change orders of 20%, or are we going to?
I think what I'm proposing is we leave the language alone. And then we also give you every month a spreadsheet that has every single project and then every change order associated with those projects, so that you can see it. If there's any kind of a problem there, you can say, hey, you haven't talked to us about this, what's going on? Even if it's a small project, you could do that. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense. It's just that you're saying one thing, which I'm, but this is saying something different. You have to realize that I don't stay up at night trying to make Chris's life miserable or Annette's or anybody's. What I am saying is that past experience, even here at the PUD, we have crossed or had some pretty big change orders in the past. And a lot of times it was the overlooking of the engineers and saying, whoops, and I understand, holding a wall, I understand a broken water line that, we have to fix real quick. Those are emergencies, or those are change orders that need to be dealt with. But when we're talking 60 million for a plant and somebody forgets something big and they shouldn't have, the owner pays for it, not the engineer or the architect or the developer or the contractor. It's us that pays for it. So whether it's $1 million change order or whatever. So I just want to be careful that we stay close to this project as commissioners, mainly you guys, because I'm not going to be here, that you're aware of what you're going to be held responsible for.
Just to be clear, there wouldn't be $1 million change order, single $1 million
know.
change, because it's limited at 100,000. You could cumulatively get to 20% of 100,000 change orders that get to a big number, but not any
Yeah,
individual.
in this case, it would be 120 change orders of $100,000. It just, it's far more likely that if there's a change that big because something changed in the design, then, and I would say probably because of discovery of ground conditions would be the biggest risk I would put on this. And, if it's $1 million or $2 million, whatever the change order is, I'd be bringing that back to you guys. And it wouldn't be something that it's going to be an emergency. We've got to get it done tomorrow. 2 weeks would be fine. And that would give us enough time to actually put together a proposal for something that large. We'd want to do that.
Okay. Well, I'm done. I basically was going by what I read here. And I only went off the words I read here. And I was questioning what is written here. So, probably should be written a little differently than what it is. But what do the other two commissioners want to do? You're the two that's going to live with the decision, so I will not be here.
I want to have your concern addressed. I think it's a valid concern. I don't want you to be, you've got a lot of experience here at the PUD. And so I trust that what you're bringing up is real, and a lot of what you said I hadn't thought about. And so I'm in support of your concern, and I want to figure out if there's some tweaking of the language that will get us to where we need to be. So maybe the right option is
I
to,
think we can clarify the purchasing policy about when it's notified and add the exceeding language into the purchasing policy that's in the delegation of authority. So that may add some clarity, and then we can add some language. The finance director on a monthly basis provides a report of change orders.
That sounds fair.
that
I
sounds
agree
good.
with what John said.
We'll table this for the next meeting.
And we'll bring it
then?
back next time.
Okay. And then that means that we're
Bring it back next
also
time with the revisions.
going to table the purchasing policy update.
Yeah,
Yes, they go
They go
hand in
together.
hand.
So
Yeah.
technically, John, do we need to make a motion to table this then?
No, there's no action, and you can just put it
Okay.
back, Madam President, on the agenda for next time as president of the commission.
It'll just come back as a piece of old business, and we'll point out, here's what we've added. Remember the discussion we had 2 weeks ago? Here's what we've added. We ask for your approval.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Annette and Chris, and let's make sure we get these both under old business for our September 27th meeting. If there's no other discussion, let's move on to item 6D.
And
Okay,
that would be Mr. Walters.
Yes,
great.
Bill. Good morning, commissioners. I brought this action item to you several times in the past with different public utility districts, but we had a recent request from Clown County PUD for a transfer of a portion of our EEI, or Energy Efficiency Investment budget to them. And because basically under the current rate period with the 2-year rate period with Bonneville, they've exhausted their budget allocation that was set for them. And the reason being is that they've got an aggressive commercial, residential, energy efficiency program. They got several thousand customers and they've run out of those budget. So they sent a letter to us, made that request. I looked at what our budget was and what was remaining, and determined that $125,000 was a reasonable transfer amount. And so I'm recommending that we make that transfer. We have a current interlocal agreement with Clallam. And if this transfer is approved, it would be an amendment to Exhibit A to that interlocal agreement. And it's Amendment 3 because we've done 2 previous transfers to Clallam County PUD. And with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions,
Brian?
comments? Go ahead.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yeah, Brian, what is the full BPA-EEI budget for us? 500,000, 600?
For the current rate period, it was about $570,000. And that's budget, that's not actual, funding, so. And currently the only other project we have, we're finishing up a project that will get funding under this EEI budget, a project for Phillips 66. But even with that project pending completion, we'll still have significant funds for the next fiscal year, which is fiscal year 2023. Then we go through the process again, a new allocation. So I don't think there'll be any impact to us should we have an unexpected energy efficiency project pop up in the next year. Neither the city of Blaine or the city of Sumas have requested any funds. I've kept in touch. The Bonneville account exec we worked with on this one, also, she always notifies me if she's hearing that Sumas or Blaine may need additional funding. So I think we're okay on that front as well.
Yeah, I'm happy in the past we've been able to help our community like Sumas and Blaine but it does bother me, as you know. I'm happy to help other PUDs, but we give so much of that money away that's set aside for Whatcom County. I just wish we could find better ways, but to keep the money here and to serve this community even better. But I understand you and I have gone around and around on this. So
one thing I can offer, Commissioner Murphy, is that the program was tweaked a few years ago, and we started taking advantage with any major project. We can actually get a utility, what's called a utility incentive. We can take a portion of our own budget as an incentive for completion of a project and set it aside and use it in any manner we want. And right now we've got a separate fund. We've got about $8,000 in that fund of incentive money. We'll get an incentive when the Phillips 66 project's complete meaning the paperwork's all done. And we'll set that aside too. Those funds are unencumbered in the sense that we could use them for a renewables project. We could use them, let's say, for setting up a vehicle charging station. We have total discretion on how that funding is spent. So that's the one thing I can offer. We're building a fund there to do a project that we want to do that's separate from the requirements of the EEI process.
Well, appreciate that. I have no further questions.
So commissioners, at this point, I would ask for your approval of the amendment as proposed.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, Annette, you are up next, it looks like, for agenda item 6E, which is a work session for commissioner input for the 2023 budget. Go
Correct.
ahead.
So this is our standard, I guess, official kickoff to the budget, though internally we've been working on it for a couple months. But this is our first step of getting feedback from you as commissioners as to things you want us to focus on, any things you have questions on, things like that. I do have the strategic plan, goals and strategies here. So I know that's a big part of it, but if there is anything additional or anything you would like to, here's your first chance to have input in the budget. How about that? And then after this, we will send out the letters to our customers and have, at the end of October, we have the first draft presentation. And then usually the following week, we have all our customer meetings. So there's multiple times to have input, but this is our kickoff session.
So, and just to be clear, you guys can give us input anytime. So you can give us input now. If you think of something in a day or two or whatever, just send a note to me, send a note to Annette, and we'll go ahead and begin to incorporate it. This is going to be an iterative process.
I stayed up half the night trying to come up with things, and yet I only could come up with one complaint.
Oh,
You do
no.
an excellent job. You do a
That's the
great
complaint?
job. That's a good. No, I want to thank all of, I know Chris and everybody here is involved in developing the budget, but I look at the budget and I always am impressed how deep everyone goes into the budget to develop it. You really do a great job of going deep and then coming back to us. I feel that way about it. And you talk to our customers and everything else, and they have the chance to give feedback. It's up to them. So I thank you, but great job. I have no questions, concerns. I can sleep tonight.
So
Fishmani?
I'll just raise a topic and maybe we can follow up more in our next meeting, Chris, on the subject. Is that when I look at our strategic plan and certainly what I've been advocating for as a commissioner since becoming a commissioner, taking those two pieces and then relating it to our actions. The area where now I think, from my perspective, there's the largest gap in terms of what we're doing is in the area of energy, renewable energy, and so on. And I look forward to talking more about that, but I'd rather maybe spend a little bit more time with you, Chris, to figure out concrete actions that actually impact our community in a significant way on the energy front, and allocating the resources to do that. So, and we can talk more about that. Some of it has to do with staff, some of it has to do with potential capital projects, and that's something that I'm looking forward to talking about in more depth. And we got plenty of time. So.
Say, will we be able to hear what your concerns are, O'Toole, and as you and Chris talk, because I'd be interested in learning more about what your thoughts are in that area. So maybe this is not the right time to talk about it, but we can come back later and
I'll report back to the commission. Yeah, all right. But it's not inconsistent with anything I've said in previous meetings. But yes, it would be good to be more specific than what I'm doing right now.
Well, and anything that gets into the budget comes back to you guys. I mean, you'll see it. We have nothing to hide. It's all right on the open.
And I echo that I really appreciate the process we have and looking forward to continuing to contribute to it. So.
All I have to say is that I'm glad that the strategic plan is on your desk, Annette, and I think that to me is the guide, and we spent a lot of time thinking through that, and certainly translating some of those goals into budget items will require the staff experts to provide some estimates and detail to you. But to me, that's the sort of North Star for where I think we should be going on the budget.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And we will be working on incorporating those. And like I said, the second meeting in October, we'll have the big presentation with a lot of the background and a lot of where we're at that point. I can say rates currently will be going up, and between the Plant 1 rebuild and some projects we have out at Grandview, there's definitely upward pressure on rates this year. So just forewarning you.
This is not directly related to the budget, but I'm wondering, because our strategic plan influences the budget and everything we do, I know it's on our website now under the strategic plan, but could we also list it as kind of a news item on our homepage so that more folks are seeing it?
The strategic plan.
Anne's nodding
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And
Anne's nodding yes. We'll link it.
Okay. And if there's any language needed from us, like this is important because it influences our budget, happy to help with that. So thank you. Just want to make sure everybody is seeing that is interested in it.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you, Annette. Just pulling my agenda up here. So the next item on the agenda is the general manager report.
So my report this time is quite quick. I just wanted to let everybody know that John Humphrey's public records request has now cost us $38,479 and counting. We still don't have the final tranche of emails out, and so this cost will ultimately change. And just wanted to let everybody know where that was. Other than that, I've been pretty darn busy and will continue to be. And are there any questions for me directly? If not, I would suggest we move on to the operations report with Brian Walters.
Does that sound good to both the commissioners? Just thumbs up? Okay, great. Brian, take it away.
Operations report will be brief as well, but first of all, I'd like to send out a couple of shout outs. So one is to our new director of operations, Kurt. Since Dwayne retired and is no longer with us, Kurt stepped in, and it's been almost a seamless transition. He's picked up the work that Dwayne's had underway, and he's just doing a great job. His plate's full, but I don't see any frowns on his face yet, so he'll be with us for a while longer. But anyway, he's doing a great job. The other is water operations crew, who likewise are doing a great job. Can't remember, it was earlier this year, the end of last year, we approved the new district's comprehensive water plan for the Grandview system. And part of that plan that was put together mainly by Dave Olson, part of that plan was to have a cross connection policy and implementation plan for addressing cross connections of our potable water system at Grandview. Once that plan was approved, the water operations crew, on their own initiative, jumped right in and started an assessment of all the existing cross connections out at Grandview, looking for, are the connections meeting standards? Are they not meeting standards? Are there issues where we could have contamination of our potable water? And they have now looked at all connections in Grandview. They prepared a report identifying where we need to address some situations. And now we're getting to the implementation phase. So I just kudos to those guys. They pulled together a report, gave me a 3-ring binder. We know exactly where there's issues and where there's not. And they just took the initiative. So thanks to the water operations crew, Devin and his crews. So other than that, the only other thing I'll mention is we're seeing a trend starting to develop. This has been happening over the last couple of years, but we're getting a trickling in of requests for connection to our main water line, 24-inch line coming out of Water Plant 1 that runs up Douglas Road. And these connection requests are for people that either want for water for irrigation, or they're going to take our industrial water and put a packaged potable plant on the other end to provide drinking water. And the reason for that is we're seeing wells up in that area. Either the water levels drop, they're gone dry, or the water quality is poor. They're getting brackish water in their wells. So the reason I bring that to your attention now is that it is going to have, continued budget impact going forward as we address these new connection requests, because that water line, our 24-inch line, was not really set up for multiple connections to it. It's not an easy pipe to work with. And so we try at all costs to avoid any new taps of that line. And we're trying to find where we can tie people into an existing tap on the line. So it's taking resources and not only our own staff, but also outside engineering to figure out some of these new connections so that we can get the customers hooked up. And I'm going to assume this trend is going to continue, and we'll probably also start seeing it more on the Aldergrove line as well. And with that, that's all I have.
Thanks, Brian.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you. I've been hearing about that too, Brian, about the 24-inch water line, and I'm starting to understand that might be an undersized line for our future needs. Is that correct?
No, I would not say that, Commissioner. It's more an issue of that line was built to serve industry. It was never intended to be like a municipal water main where you can easily tap it. So a tap of that line can cost several $100,000. That's not feasible for a small irrigation customer or somebody who wants to use water, industrial water, to make potable. So it's more an issue of how do we work with that line to provide additional connections. In the future, if we were to replace the water mains, yes, we would probably upsize them. But right now,
That's that poly pipe?
Oh,
Is-
no.
Is it the poly pipe you're talking about?
No, this
No.
is the concrete steel core
concrete.
wrap over
Okay.
the steel core.
Oh, okay,
And it's the actual construction of the thing that makes it expensive and difficult to tap.
okay.
Yeah, steel concrete, and it
Clearly.
has a band around it as well. So it's really difficult to work with.
Sounds that way, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was designed to be an expressway for the water and not to have any off ramps. It was
Oh, okay.
a freeway that was meant to go out to Cherry Point.
Oh, okay.
So I love your analogy, Chris. How about putting in an outer road?
So one of the things that we've looked at, and I'm kind of stealing Brian's thunder here, and it's the operations guys. They've looked at, what would it take to have a standard 6 or 8 inch pipe that comes off of there and then run it some distance parallel and use that for taps. So that's the kind of thing that they're looking at. But clearly the answer is, you've got a 60-year-old pipe and it served us well. There will come a point, just pure asset management says that the life of the asset's over, it needs to be replaced. Clearly when that happens, we'll replace it with something that is more capable and much more easily tapped.
But maybe having the outer road will extend the life of the highway I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe putting an outer road increases the life of the highway.
I don't think it will in this case. We're already 60 years into the life of the pipe. And it's gonna degrade because of soil condition and hydraulic cycling, pressure cycling
Yeah.
on the wall.
Yeah.
That's what causes the aging.
Right. And then, but also as even in the replacement strategy, maybe the replacement strategy is a highway and an outer road.
You know,
Perhaps, or a highway that's you can build off ramps off of easily.
Right.
That's-
However you want to look at it, yeah.
Yeah, one of the challenges is when we come off our main pipe, which for the most part is buried in underneath Douglas Road, is that we are using existing taps that were placed back when that pipe was installed. That's in the road right away. The minute we go off ramp, as you will, now we're starting to negotiate private easements. And that's an issue for us as well.
Mhm. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion?
Yeah, I've the standard question. What's the river level looking like?
Well, it's not much different from what I reported 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. We're still running okay. We actually had an uptick when we had the real warm weather and the smoke. There was actually an uptick in flow because more melt at the headwaters. So we're running ahead of typical this time of year. The flows are. We're not in any risk of setting a new record low or anything like that. So I guess.
Do we monitor temperature, Brian?
Pardon?
Do we monitor temperature?
Yes. So we monitor temperature. It's also on the USGS website for the gauge station at Ferndale. So
Could you plan to, in the future that we also mention temperature and is the temp, and relative to something like, is it abnormally high, abnormally low, or right in a sweet spot? So do you have a feel for that though right now?
I don't have a feel for whether that's in the sweet spot. It has been up in the 60s temperature wise.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good thing to know.
We'd be more than happy to report on it as that data is easily available.
Mhm.
In fact, I was just reminded that it's, Anne reminded me it's on our website under current river conditions. That actually links to that live. So
great.
from our website, you can just go there and look at it.
Thank you, Ann. That's great. I think I remember that now, but that's a great reminder. Thank you.
Should we move on to commissioner reports? Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Deshmani, would you like to go first?
Sure. I've one update. There was a very short broadband advisory group meeting on the subject of just reapproving. They needed some formalities for approving the recommendations of the advisory group. It was a short meeting focused on the voting members, of which I am not one, for the purpose of just formalizing the approval of the recommendations, which I discussed at the last meeting. The other thing is I attended the county's climate advisory committee meeting. The county's in the process of hiring a climate manager. I think that position closes shortly. And so that's somebody that PUD may want to invite at some point when they're settled in to talk and participate. The last thing is that at the climate advisory meeting, hydrogen was discussed. And I just sent Chris a white paper, and maybe Chris, if you can forward it to the other commissioners, that would be great. And the reason why that paper was impactful for me is that Ray Kamada has identified an indirect global warming impact potential of hydrogen emissions. Until that presentation, I was under the impression that direct emission of hydrogen has a nearly zero impact on global warming impact potential. But what this paper suggests, and it's been developed and is being peer reviewed by a local technical expert on the subject of air emissions and hydrogen, is that there is a significant global warming impact potential from direct emission of hydrogen. That is potentially very significant in terms of the wisdom of hydrogen infrastructure and a consideration that could impact many hydrogen projects. It's brand new work. It needs to be peer reviewed further, probably. It needs to be digested. But it's definitely a potential big negative as it relates to hydrogen. Obviously something to keep an eye on. That's and I think the paper speaks for itself. It's well written. It's easy to follow. So if Chris, you could just send that to the commission and other staff that would be interested. I'm sure Brian would be interested and others. So I want to just mention that.
Thank you. Commissioner Murphy?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to meet with Andrew. I always appreciate that time with Andrew because the two of you understand broadband way better than I do, and he can simplify it and bring me on board and bring me up to date. So I always appreciate my meetings with him. I also had an opportunity to meet with Dwayne, say my goodbyes to him, and talk about just the past and the present and his future. So sounds like he's got himself, I think he's on the road right now, probably enjoying he and his wife. I also had time to meet with Kurt. Really enjoyed both Dwayne and Kurt because we met over at Plant 1 and discussed the project over there and walked through it. And, Kurt is right up there on top of things. So I felt as a commissioner very fortunate, comfortable with Dwayne leaving, though that was sad, but also with Kurt stepping in. He really understands things. So I don't think we're going to lose anything. In fact, I'm pretty sure of that. I met with Henry and Lyndon talking water issues, farming and WIDS and stuff. And that was a real good meeting to catch up on. Always enjoy my time meeting with Chris. So we talked there. And then I will be attending 14th, 15, 16 at WPUDA and taking part in that. I don't know if the other two of you are going to be there or do Zoom, but that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Murphy. My update is just that I've been busy catching up a little bit, having meetings with Chris and John and today I will be attending the Whatcom County Council meeting. They have a broadband policy discussion on the agenda for today, and I wanted to be present for that. So I'll be watching that. I also was in touch with Jim Darling, and he provided a kind of follow-up deliverable to our strategic plan, which we to use with our general manager evaluation process, which we didn't really have much of a process before. So that's basically just aligning our GM evaluation process with what's in our strategic plan. So hoping to get that on the agenda for our October 25th meeting. Was in touch with Chris about that so that we can have at least another one of those before the end of the year, because agendas are getting full. So I am going to be, I'm not able to make the WPUDA meetings in person, but I'll be dropping in on Zoom I actually cannot make it to the telecom one though. And Chris, you said you're going to be going to that one via Zoom.
Yeah, I'll be at that one. Yeah, via Zoom,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. So that's it for me, for my commissioner report. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is public comment.
Do the Perrys have a comment?
I would,
Could I ask you to come up to the mic? Make sure everybody can hear you.
I'll speak for you now.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I have 1,000 different thoughts, so my problem is to keep it to 3 minutes. I always enjoy seeing Whatcom County working toward solutions for problems as far as government. Working in Whatcom County. My frustration as a citizen who knows very little about how to make things work. But I see, as I observe, when local entities get together, and I've heard this for years, we all need to come to the table. Everybody says it, but it never happens. Really the way that I see that it works, because when you folks get together and you have differing views and you represent people, there's this interaction that happens, and when it does, on a small scale, and I would hope on a large scale, that solutions do come that fit. It's not Puget Sound partnership having a carrot and saying, if you do it this way, we'll give you the money. And it's grants. The federal government, the state government. And when 3 minutes is short. When the comp plan was being done in Whatcom County, we followed that the last time, and it's coming up again. And I learned that there was 225,000 people in the county at that point, probably more now. And there were pockets of people who were very small, a couple of thousand. And they were wielding their power. And they were not at the table. How can I finish this up? At a council meeting a couple of months or two ago, so they were talking about the South Fork and Tubby. This is really not connected, and yet it is. And when I saw in the public comment period, or I'm in my 80s, some questions were brought up about citizenship, kind of different parts of the county. And again, I saw an older a citizen of the county that belongs to a smaller group say, oh, we need to come to the table, because he could see that from the conversation not all the parties were engaged, if you can see that. But anyway, I just really appreciate the fact that the port and the community are working together. The port has done some great things lately. And my husband is saying, shut up. But anyway, it's fun to see how we're so connected, even as individuals. We have a business. We see the point from Grandview. We follow the planning. We have children all over the county. I'm happy to see you as a PUD working with other local entities to bring good solutions. And even Satpal, I don't always agree with him, but his and the farming community are trying to come with the water and seeing that your plan, your strategic plan is actually going to be regarded perhaps by the executive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Commissioner, we have no other in-person comments, and I don't know, Mike, do we see anybody with their hands up?
Not that I can see.
Yeah, I don't see any either. So with that, we will close public comment. And the next item on our agenda is an executive session related to potential litigation for water rights adjudication. And John, you're estimating that that's going to be 3 hours?
We put down 3 hours, not knowing how the framework of the conversation may go on the topics related here. I'm hopeful we might be done within 2. And if we aren't taking any action and you'll just come out and adjourn. So
Okay.
that was a broad estimate, hoping we are done sooner, but there won't be any action when we come out.
Okay. So let's all take a break. I know we're not expecting our other legal counsel to be here until, was it 11? Should we wait until 11 or are they
10:30,
able?
10:30,
Oh,
10:30.
Oh, okay.
I've been keeping them updated that we're looking at 10:30. So, but I can tell them a 5-minute break or a 10-minute break. And you want to take a 10-minute break, I'll tell them I've been texting them and emailing them updates as we go.
I'm okay with 5 minutes. Does that work for both the other commissioners, Chris, John?
And my only agenda is that I need to start some coffee. I can, as long as I start it, which I can do in 5 minutes, I'll be able to tap into it during the meeting. So.
Okay, so let's say 10. Well, my clock is wrong on my. Let's just say.
When we go, well, I may suggest 10:40.
Perfect. Let's do 10:40. We'll see everybody at 10:40 and on the Zoom link that you provided.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks. Okay, hello, everyone. We are just ending our executive session today, and there was no action. And so that's it for our meeting today. Thank you all for joining us. The meeting is closed.